Before we get into this week's episode, I want to quickly tell you about our brilliant sponsor, Rad Scotland. If you are interested in working in the TV industry and you're not quite sure how to get in or where to start, then this could be the perfect opportunity for you. Rad Scotland is run by TRC Media, and it is an 8-month paid traineeship that places new entrants at an independent production company here in Scotland, and it also provides expert training and guidance throughout the duration of that programme. It's specifically designed to help people from underrepresented groups, including those from minority ethnic and socioeconomic disadvantaged backgrounds, and those who are deaf, disabled and neurodivergent. It's a brilliant scheme, and I actually had the chance to speak to some of this year's Rad trainees, and they all seem to get a lot out of it and thoroughly enjoyed it. To apply, you can click the link in our show notes. Applications close on the 3rd of June, which is a Wednesday, 5 p.m.
Just get a real job.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Just Get a Real Job with your host, me, Jamie McKinley. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome on David Kirkman, who is an abstract artist and has been doing some really interesting things, not just in art, but also using social media to promote his art. Thrilled to have you on the show, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm really glad we can make this happen finally. I know we've been chatting for quite a few months back and forth to try and find a day that suited. But just for our listeners, do you want to sort of introduce yourself? I sort of described you as an abstract artist, but sometimes artists are like, well, you know, I'm more than that. How would you sort of describe yourself for our listeners?
I think you predominantly, I'm an abstract artist. Yeah, absolutely. Best way to explain it, I'm a mixed media artist as well. So a lot of texture, a lot of colour, a lot of contrast. To create sort of bold statement, generally abstract pieces. So that is what I do. And yeah, I've now been professional, doing it full time for nearly 4 years now.
Whoa, that's mad. And it's one of your paintings is behind us right now, right? That's one of your own. Tell us quickly. Tell us about this painting behind you, just because we have it live, you know.
Have it behind me. This is actually a commission I've just finished for a client. So this is one of my theories. I don't plan generally anything I do. We'll probably get onto it later, but my mind doesn't work like that. So it's very much emotion based. And this piece I've done for a client. They like my ethereal, which is me on a calmer day, I always say. And people look at them and go, what? That's calm? Believe me, that's calm in my head. So they kind of like appear more like nebulas, you could say. But I really like this one because it's almost like two like peacocks kissing in the middle of it, which I really, really like. So yeah. So it's been a fun commission to do, especially with a bit of gold leaf, a bit of bling.
And it's a nice image you'd given there for the people listening, because of course I forget that the majority of my listeners still listen to podcasts. Obviously video medium's now a big part of it, and I think it's sometimes easy for me to forget that, you know, when I describe stuff visually, not everyone will know. So I appreciate you sort of describing it with the peacocks and stuff there, just so people can have a bit of an idea what the painting might look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
David, I want to ask you about how you got into art, because it's quite an interesting story when I was doing my research and stuff. So could you tell us how this sort of came about? Because you've been doing it, 3-4 years now, as a sort of properly going all in.
Yeah, so full time. So I started painting when I was very, very young, like 6 years old. So my granddad was an artist, and he got me into it. So I remember, I think I sold my first piece when I was about 12 years old. It was like in an exhibition, and it was a couple of pheasants and everything else. So I've always painted, but I took it to A level and I hated it. I hated the academic side of art because they wanted you to show your workings or where you came from or pre-script every single piece. And I struggled with that. And we could probably come on in a bit why I struggled with that so much, but I really did. And at that point, I didn't know why. So it put me off art for a very, very, very long time. And then I was a stay-at-home dad with my eldest son, and during his naps it was like, oh, what do I do? How do I fill this time, kind of thing? And I illustrated and wrote and published a children's book just for him, nothing more. And that gave me the bug again to create. From there I sort of fell back into portraiture, did a bit of portraiture of like the kids and just messing around really. But unfortunately at that time, and I've always struggled with my mental health, and the portrait side of thing wasn't really helping me escape it, because I was trying to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect and I couldn't relax. So then a friend of mine said, why don't you try abstract art? And I remember, and I get it all the time, and it really winds me up when I get it. And I was like, God, that's easy. And he was like, try it. And I was like, it's so much harder than it looks, because as soon as you get this big empty canvas in front of you, everyone's saying, they go, what do I do? What do I do? But I sort of fell in love with it because there are no real rules. I don't believe there's many rules. Yes, you can have an eye for colour and theory and composition, but I think it's the freest way we can create. It doesn't have to look like anything. We are purely channeling our emotions. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. And then sort of, as a lot of artists do, you sell to friends, family. For like 2 or 3 years, I did that. And then very impulsively, I quit my job. I was like, I've had enough. I'm just going to become a full-time artist. Stupidly. I wouldn't advise anyone else to do it. I really wouldn't. But yeah, and that was 4 years ago now. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
It's interesting. You're like, I would never advise anyone else to sort of do that, but you made it work, which is class.
Yeah, I think it's situational, because a lot of people reach out to me and go, how do you do it? I'm very lucky, and I'm always honest with people, that I do this round looking after my children. So my wife is the main breadwinner, the main earner. So there are still pressures on me, but there's less. So when people come to me and go, I want to quit my job and I'm the main earner, it's a very, very different proposition. And I think what I've learned doing it the hard way, which is making mistakes and learning along the way, is the reason why a lot of people do it as like a side hustle or a hobby next to a main job for quite a few years, is because you need exposure. You need people to see your work, and then those people have to be in a position or looking to buy that artwork. And that can sometimes take 2 or 3 years. So as a new artist, and I'm still a relatively new artist, even though I've done pretty well in the last 4 years, I haven't been doing it very, very long. So it just takes time to get yourself out there. And that's why I say to anyone, like, maybe don't be as impulsive as me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you though, David, talking about that honestly, because the name of this podcast is Just Get a Real Job. It's all about the realities of creative careers, especially right now when the financial pressures are real for a lot of people. And I think often there's this glamorized image on social media where we only see the best of what people are doing. So often from the outside, it looks like somebody is maybe doing a certain way. And what I quite like about the content you share as well is that you're very honest sometimes about the genuine realities of being a full-time artist as well. Not just financially, but also, with my studio might be a bit messy, even though it looks all great on all the photos and stuff like that. I think another thing to observe from what you were saying as well about people maybe needing time and not quitting their full-time job straight away is that often from interviewing creative people and from my own experience, that when you're dependent for money on the thing you do that you love, it can also take the fun of it away because it puts pressure on you to deliver. So do you ever find that where you're like, I need to be able to enjoy this, but sometimes you feel like you're being paid to do a project, so it can get in the way? Yeah,
I think with everything, I think one of the biggest mistakes, I know I made this mistake, is you approach it as your hobby rather than a business. If you want to do it full time, it has to become a business, and you have to wear that hat. You have to, otherwise keep it as a hobby. So yeah, there are always going to be things that are hard, like any job, or you struggle with, and sometimes you might not want to do that commission, but you've got to do it. But that does make it harder sometimes. But I think the majority of the time, we're really lucky to have the job we do as creatives, because we get to do something we 99% of the time love, even if there's hard bits of that, and put ourselves out there, and other people connect with that. And when you see someone smile or connect or feel hopeful because of the piece you've created, that kind of makes all the ups, the downs, the hard times 100% worth it. But yeah, it's definitely not all plain sailing. You're 100% right.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice answer though. You touched on some mistakes there as well. What have some of the mistakes or things you've learned from being in the last couple of years as you've sort of started to figure things out? Did any come to mind?
Oh yeah, 100%. So at the beginning, I think, like I said, exposure is a big one. if you don't get your work out there, no one's going to see it. Okay. And that's a really simple thing to say, but there's the wrong way to get it out there. And I did the wrong way. So I went with, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to go down that route, but there's some people and some exhibitions that will charge money, a lot of money, to show your work for maybe 10 days. And it sounds brilliant. And you might pay £200 to be in these galleries, and they're vanity galleries, and we all know about it. But when you're new, you don't realize that these things exist. You don't realize that every time you want to show your work, it's going to cost so much money. And I got stung. I did the wrong art fairs at the beginning. I did the wrong exhibitions at the beginning, and I lost money. But I don't believe there's any huge mistakes, because you can learn from it. Okay, why? So now when I approach an art fair, for example, where is it? Who's probably going to be going to it? If I'm not going to sell, what other things can I get from it? So maybe build my mailing list, maybe make connections, maybe it's good for social media. Don't always just focus on the sales. And there's all these things you pick up along the way that made it still hurts. I still don't like making mistakes, but they make them slightly easier to swallow. But yeah, those sort of times when you just throw money at to show your work. Yeah, I did that a couple of times at the beginning, and it hurt. Yeah.
Are there any other sort of exposure things that you've had to, like, is social media quite a big component in you selling art, for example, or getting people to see it?
Yeah, I think 100% getting people to see it. Social media is an amazing tool. It's also very, very hard work, especially at the minute with the algorithm changes. It's an absolute nightmare.
100%.
And I think I'm seeing so many creators at the minute really, really struggling, and saying that, they're not getting any, no one's seeing, and I've got an okay following, but not huge. Some of these people have got hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're still not getting any content seen. And as a creative, you're dependent on that. You're dependent on those things. So social media is a huge tool, but I think you've also got to be careful that you don't go around the rabbit hole with it. And I have on occasion where you get so fixated, and me having ADHD, being neurodivergent, means that I can fixate on certain things, and I can become quite engrossed, which is a massive plus when you want to grow an art business from nothing. Not so good when you're going down the rabbit hole of social media. So I think you just got to have a healthy balance and understand that it's great for exposure, but you're not going to be selling on it every single day. It just doesn't work like that. People need to get to know you, and they've got to, and that's really what it's about. People connecting with you, then they come to your shows, then they see your work, and then somewhere along the line, they may buy, they may not. But the main thing is that the world is able to appreciate what you put out there as a creative. And I think that's the thing we sometimes forget.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it is quite hard as an independent creator when, like, algorithms or whatever can change on a dime, so you'd figured something out. You end up spending so much time, like, thinking about what you're posting or how to get people to see it, and then you forget about the actual thing you do in the first place, and it can actually distract you for quite a lot of time. I want to sort of ask you a bit more about social media, but I'll come back to it because you sort of touched on the being neurodivergent, ADHD and stuff. I know that you've been very honest about this online as well, and in other interviews and stuff, but I'd love to talk to you about this. I'm dyspraxic and dyslexic, so often on this podcast I'm very honest about the challenges that brings, the positives that brings to my work. But tell us about your sort of neurodivergence and how it has an impact on your art and life.
I think it's amazing. My son, my eldest, was diagnosed before I was, which is very, very common, especially people my age. So common. So my art never changed since I've been diagnosed. I've always created in the moment through emotion. I just didn't know why it was so vibrant. I didn't know why it was trying to celebrate. And I didn't know why, even though I was struggling in my own head, that I always ended up creating something that was quite uplifting when it could have gone quite dark. And then once I got the diagnosis of both being autistic and having ADHD, it kind of went, okay, it's because I wear my heart on my sleeve. I always have. I just didn't know why. Which is good for creating, I think. Bad for the world we live in sometimes. It can be a hard place to operate in. But when you sort of allow your art to drown out all the noise in your head, which is what I do, I can go to quite a calm place, even though the piece is quite loud or quite buoyant and quite everything else, because the energy from what I'm feeling is coming out on the canvas. And that is purely because my brain works the way it does. If I wasn't neurodivergent, I wouldn't create in this way, and therefore I wouldn't be putting the work out I put out there. So they're intrinsically linked. And my life experiences for the last, struggling with my mental health for so many years, not knowing why. And I'm sure you probably can understand when you get a diagnosis, you're like, it's like a relief. Like, oh, I'm not a horrible person. I'm not this weird person. I actually understand why I act the way why I am the way I am. And it helped me so much. And which is why I'm so vocal about it, because yes, it's very linked to my art. It's who I am. But I also feel that there's a lot of people that reach out to me saying, I've never told anyone they're autistic, for example, and they're scared to. And I think people need to know that whoever you are, whatever you're going through, you shouldn't hide who you are. I think that's really important, to feel like you can be, your true self. And that's what I try and get with my art as well.
And I think that really helps as well when you're building a sort of, again, not to make it too businessy, but when you're trying to build a brand, I think that actually is very important now, especially in 2026, where we have things like AI and things all sounding quite similar. It's good to just sort of, if you're being yourself, it's easier to connect with audiences and people. But I'm kind of curious as well, because I was very fortunate. I got diagnosed properly with my dyslexia and dyspraxia by the time I was 21. I kind of knew throughout being a teenager that I had something going on. I got some support at school, but that must have been crazy getting such a late diagnosis in your life. Like, it must have been almost kind of liberating, because you would have just never understood why maybe things felt different to you, or things were hard. That is mad.
Yeah, so I was 39 when I got it. Yeah, I can't tell you. It's so frustrating because you don't know, you think differently because you've always thought that way. So you struggle with things, but you don't know. You think, oh, well, everyone must struggle with that or not. It's only when you talk to people, you're like, no, I know. Fixation, I brought it out earlier, fixation for me is an amazing thing, but also it's an horrendous thing. It makes a lot of people that are neurodivergent incredibly successful and driven, but also I can get hugely burnt out and very, very tired. And I can't sort of just do something half-heartedly. Some people are like, just chill, relax. And I'm like, I wish I could. I absolutely wish I could. I don't know how to do that. That isn't me. So when you're just sort of naturally like this, and I always get told I was the chaotic kid, not the naughty kid, but the chaotic kid, the one that, got very angry very easily because I was so frustrated. And I took that into my adulthood. In the sense that in the car, if I got caught up, I'd get angry, and I didn't know why I was getting so angry all the time. And then that, like I said, impacted my mental health, which is why I took up the abstract art in the first place, to try and give myself an outlet. But once you learn why you're getting angry, and you learn because you're basically trying to be someone you're not, trying to make your mind fit a mold it's not supposed to, and you realize why you're struggling so much, it's not about getting a label, it's about understanding. And I think that's huge. And it's had a huge impact on my life. Yeah, it has.
Does that ever come into when you've been quite honest online about these things, or have you had quite a positive reaction?
A majority positive, but I have had it. Of course I have. It's like anything with your art, if you're putting yourself out there, people come and say they hate what I do. And that's, I don't mind it, because if everyone thought my stuff was nice, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not pushing the envelope. And it's the same when you're talking about neurodivergence or mental health. I know people that still don't believe mental health is a thing. Get on with it. And I'm like, and that surprises me to this day. I used to work for a little bit in the mental health space. So, and there are people that still have that quite old fashioned view. And there are some people that someone turned around to me the other day and said, you're just, you're talking about life. There's no such thing as a neurotypical person. And I know the point they were trying to make, we're all different, but there is a difference between someone who's neurodivergent and someone who isn't. And that's basically what neurotypical is. It's not saying that everyone's the same. It's saying that you're not neurodivergent. Your brain works differently to someone who is. That's fine. And a lot of people go, oh yeah, but I do that. And I'm like, you probably do it, because the diagnosis isn't that I do something different to you. It's that I do enough of these things and it has a negative impact on my life, which is why I get the diagnosis. So it gets frustrating, and I completely agree with you. Yeah, the label, because it's happened a lot at once, people are like, oh, someone else, someone else, someone else. But I think you just, again, have to go back to living your life and try not to care what others think. And that's hard for me to do. It really is. But I'm getting better at it. And it's kind of like, well, if you don't like, for me, of who I am, then I won't. That's fine. We don't have to converse. We don't have to be in each other's world. But you are right. It has come with some stigma. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. Most of the insecurities I've had in my adult life, and I went on a real journey with this in the last couple of years, doing more things like therapy or mental health, and just growing up, I think, as well. And just when you grow up, you
Yeah.
get to a certain age, start to accept yourself. But looking back and going like, this is so linked to things like being bad at sports at school, or I know I spill stuff all the time, or like little things about very clumsy because I'm a dyspraxia, and like I get so frustrated with myself. So it's like that way where you're like, it's not your fault, it's fine, because people don't always understand that. That can be the other thing, like example at work today, and I'm not calling anyone out, but like I was holding the door open for somebody, and I thought they had the door, but it's a coordination thing, and I think they thought I was quite rude because I hadn't held. I genuinely thought I'd held it open for them,
Yeah.
and that's an example of an everyday thing that can make you feel like a bad person when and you constantly have that
And you haven't meant
parallel.
to
So
do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, of
Oh,
course, yeah. So
I get it. I get it completely. I mean, I've never got I'm terrible at spelling. I've never been like diagnosed dyslexic, but I think dyslexia and ADHD do overlap, because my
yeah,
spelling is, I'm telling you, atrocious, to the extent that before I can be writing a post on social media for such a long time until I actually send, because I'm so paranoid that I'm going to spell something wrong and then people are going to judge me for spelling that thing wrong. So I completely resonate and understand where you're coming
yeah.
from.
I've actually kind of reframed that a wee bit now when I post stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm very vigilant to try and make sure that things are spelled correctly. But because everything's so perfect now, because everyone uses ChatGPT it's kind of obvious now when people are using AI to post. I
Yeah.
actually kind of like it when I've got a spell mistake in there, because I almost think people will know this is not AI. They'll know it's me. And I quite like that, actually. So that's something I've started doing to get over that. Um, I'm really enjoying chatting to you about this sort of neurodivergence stuff as well. But I'm really curious. I want to go back to something you said about when we started talking about this about 5 minutes ago, about how it's an outlet for you, your art and stuff. How does the painting, like, how does that help you, like, get out of your own head and stuff? Can you talk us a bit through that process
Yeah,
and how that
sure.
links?
I think it it's it's hard. It is hard for it to do it, because my mind is such a busy place, always going, always going. But the best thing I've found is like mindfulness, and there's so many different versions of mindfulness. And some people think like this hippie going, yeah, you can do that. You can do meditation, and I actually really like meditation. But for me, mindfulness comes in two things: art and scuba diving. And both take my mind off my conscious thoughts. So instead of thinking what I'm going to do and stressing about what I'm going to paint, I will literally go with feel. So I'll look at the colors in front of me, and I've got loads of different materials in front of me, and I will gravitate to a certain color. And what I've learned over the years of doing it is generally the piece will become not what I'm feeling in the moment, but what I actually need to feel. So for example, I lost my nan just before Christmas, and I was really, really sad. I was very close to my nan. And I was doing a piece, and it came out so joyous. And I was like, and that's when it started to click. You know, so going back to your question, which I might go on a little tangent. I apologize. Is the reason it helps me get out my own head is because I'm not consciously thinking about the painting. I'm I'm constantly enjoying the experience of making the brush strokes or using the materials or building the colors up, and I'm not overthinking. And it's the one part of my life that I can switch off enough to not be that perfectionist, not be that control freak. And that is such a relaxing, calming feeling. And it's very liberating. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like being in a sort of flow state. That's what a lot of people talk about when it comes to art and stuff. Is
Yeah.
just getting out of your own head for once. It's a great feeling, because I mean, often people will be like, you get in your own way more than anyone else gets in your way, and I relate to that a lot. It's kind of must be almost like that, like in a sense.
It is. It's one of those, the normal thing. You walk into your studio for 5 minutes and it's been 3 hours. But it is that. It's completely that, where you're just switch off. Time just evaporates. Never, but it doesn't always do that in every. For me, it didn't do that when I was doing portraiture because I was so getting so stressed. I wasn't able to relax. But because I'm not trying to recreate, and that's why I don't use references. See, if I have a reference picture in front of me and I'm trying to recreate an abstract piece based on that, my brain can't do it. The autistic nature of my head, it cannot do it. It's so literal. It wants to take what it sees and put it on the canvas. I just can't. And then I get stressed, and then I get anxious, and then I start overthinking, and then everything else. So that's why I don't even use references, because there's nothing I can get wrong. There's nothing that I have to copy or emulate. It's purely just feel. So it only happens to me in abstract painting, which is why I do it.
Tell us sort of about your approach to abstract painting then, and explain kind of what abstract painting is for anyone. I'm assuming most people will know, but just in case anyone listening or watching isn't quite sure exactly what that sort of medium of art is.
Yeah, so abstract, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? So abstract painting is it doesn't visually look like anything like an object or a scene or anything like that. That's the best way of explaining it. So it's color, it's texture, it's contrast, it's strokes. And that's why I think a lot of people struggle with it as well, because we're so used to looking at something and being wanting it to be obvious and wanting almost to be told what it is, because as human beings, I don't think we like freedom as much as we think we like freedom. I think we want freedom, but I think we like also a little bit of steering, tell me what I should be seeing. It's a lot of shoulds. What should it be? What should it be? And I think that's why a lot of people struggle with abstract, because it's not blatantly obvious what it is. But if you see a beautiful painting of a person or an orange or something like that, you will appreciate that and you'll go, that is a stunning piece. But you won't necessarily get emotional connection with it any further than that, because you don't need to, because it's a beautiful picture of a person or an orange. You can't do that with abstract art. So it means that you're connecting on such an emotional level more than, I believe, any other painting style there is, because that's the only thing you can do. Now, you might see little visuals in it, like I said, like a nebula up there, and people see so many different things. But at the end of the day, they're connecting to the emotion in it, which I think is really, really, really cool. And that's abstract art to me.
It's really cool. And it's nice that people that are watching have a sort of an example behind them as well.
Yeah, that does help, doesn't it? Yeah.
But what must be mad is how different it must be each time, because it doesn't. I know you'll have obviously a style, and you'll probably be able to tell what David painting is, or maybe not. Maybe you don't feel you do have that distinction, but it must feel different each time, because it's not always going to be the same.
It does. It feels different every time, because you're a different person every time you paint. So you've got different feelings and different experiences that you didn't have the day before. So yeah, do I have a style? I don't have a style like most artists have a style. I got a piece of advice which I disregarded because I'm not very good with rules, and they said to me, only have one style. If you want to become a successful full-time artist, you must only have one style. That was never going to work for me. My brain doesn't work like that. And why would I become an abstract artist to only then put restrictions on what I can create? It makes zero sense to me. So I didn't. I ignored it completely. So I would say I probably have 4 different styles. So I have my ethereal style. I have my graffiti style. I have my gold collection, which is an amalgamation of the calmer gold leaf aspects, my ethereal, but then with my sort of graffiti done in a slightly different way. So it's obviously more floral almost. And then I have my Pooh Bear collection, which is almost like a completely different collection, which is almost like pop art. And that's the only thing I do in that genre. So people will see my work, interestingly, and be able to spot it's me, irrelevant as across all the styles. And I think that's because my use of color, my use of movement, the way I make my marks and everything else, there's definitely a style, but that style is spread across 4 completely different collections. So yeah.
What's your sort of favorite of the? I mean, you probably don't have a favorite really, but is there one that you kind of enjoy more at the moment? than the other?
Yeah, there is one I enjoy more, actually. Actually, it's weird because my graffiti will generally will happen when I'm very energized. So I've got loads of energy, it's a lot of color. And it sounds, when people look at me, especially if they don't paint, and I go, you can feel quite tired at the end of painting one because it's so intense. And I was like, are you only painting? Yeah, but it's such an intense, it's bright colors, really, really, emotive, big strokes and layer upon layer upon layer, which is fun if you're in the right mood. But for me, actually, my more sort of ethereal pieces, I actually enjoy creating the most because there's a lot more blending and you kind of almost become a bit more like, it comes like mesmerizing when you're like blending the colors together. And when I need that when I need that calming, that's why I say they're more calming for me. And I enjoy that process and that approach probably the most. I enjoy them all, but that is probably the one I enjoy the most.
Do you sort of learn something new every time you paint as well? Do you feel like you're constantly learning new ways, or does it ever sort of stagnate and become, I've done this so many times, I know exactly how to do this one?
I think you're always learning 100%. I think when you're getting collections, because I say, I, like I said, always paint emotionally, but I still have to have a business head. So I was just at the Affordable, first time at the Affordable in Battersea. So lucky to be there, so excited to be there. They wanted 4 of my gold pieces. They wanted that gold collection. I have to paint that gold collection. That's what they want. So you have to have a business head on. However, that gold collection, even though I know what I'm going to paint that day, is still vastly different because I'm still using the emotion to choose the colour, to choose the strokes, to choose everything else. So yeah, I think you become very good at creating certain pieces when you know you have to create that piece, but I still think you're still learning because I'm still trying to push the envelope. So, for example, a lot of things you discover might be accidental. The other day I was messing around with like water and spray paints, and if you do it correctly, you get a basic crackle effect, which you don't need crackle paste for. So it's a really, really cool thing. You can also do it with certain paints, have that same effect with spray paint. You wouldn't, and a lot of people go, oh, this is ruined. For me, I'm like, let's have some fun with this. I've just learned something else. So yeah, you are always, if you're pushing the envelope and you're really not putting restrictions on yourself, then I think you're always learning. Yeah.
That's cool. And I'm sort of asking loads of kind of almost quite geeky questions because obviously I'm not an artist myself, and I've interviewed a couple of artists, but not many. And I think it's always interesting for people listening to the show, especially people listening who want to be an artist potentially or who are also fellow artists. But how does the commissioning of art work when it comes to you? And just as well to say that there is links to all your website and Instagram stuff in the show notes, so if people are interested to look into getting potentially David to paint for them or buy anything off David, then there's links below. But how does the commissioning stuff work?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, actually, especially with abstract, because abstract people, if you paint like pet portraits and people like your pet portraits, they know what they're going to get. You're going to give them a picture and they're going to get a picture that looks like their pet. And that's quite risk-free. It's not risk-free, especially with commissions. People can get quite nervous and quite daunting. And I get that. I really do. Because a lot of the time they don't know what they want. So if they don't know what they want, then how am I going to create it? But I actually really, really, really enjoy commissions. And I think it comes down to having good communication skills and learning what the client wants. So for example, if you came to me and said, like, I want a commission, the first thing I do is, firstly, what style do you like? Because you must have a favorite of one of my styles. And then you narrow down on what you like about your favorite piece, but then what you don't like about that favorite piece. And then you start getting to have a really good picture. So you might go, oh, I absolutely love this. But for example, I don't like the texture on it. Or I don't like the color blue. So could you do it in a gray? Straight away, we're getting an understanding. Well, you like the style, you like the contrast in it, but you just don't like the blue. So it's really delving down into what people like, but also more importantly, what they don't like, and then just working with them step by step. So I've got 2 or 3 on the go at the minute, and I send them pictures. So when I'm like halfway through, I go, look, we're about halfway through. Don't judge it at the moment, but am I along the right lines? Are we okay here? Are we doing? And then a lot of the time, that's when they can start saying, you know what, not too sure about this, not too sure about that. If they turn around and went, I hate the colour, there's a bigger issue. But generally, you've nailed that down anyway. And then you can take it further. So I've got the one that I've just finished now, which is going off to Australia. Um, we did it, we finished it, got 90% of the way there. She wasn't keen on some of the pale yellows in it. Absolutely fine. That's the thing about commissions. As an artist, you can't become precious about it. You know, you're creating something for someone else, not for yourself. You have to take yourself out of it. You need to create something that looks good and you can stand by 100%, but you do have to also listen to the client because they're the one telling you what they want. So in that case, less pale yellow, more pinks, and she's now really, really happy with it. I've just got to get it to Australia now. So, which is easier said than done at the moment. So yeah, that is how commissions work in the simplest form. And yeah, I would always say, don't be scared. Whether it's working with me or another artist, find someone you love and trust the artist, because the reason you've come to them in the first place is because you like their work. Don't try and control it too much, because then you might not get a piece you like.
It's always tricky. I mean, when I got the podcast artwork redone for Just Get a Real Job a couple of years ago, I was so bad at giving notes to the poor artist that was doing it for me because I don't know how to articulate it, and I felt so sorry for him. Like, I actually ended up having to pay more because I'd explained so badly what I wanted, and then when it was delivered, I didn't like it. But it was my own fault because I hadn't found the words for it. That must be kind of frustrating though for you as an artist sometimes. But I guess that's why you have to, as you say, have good communication skills, and you know, you're running a business, so you want to keep those relationships.
You do. 100%. It is a business, but for me, fundamentally, I want every single one of my collectors to be over the moon with their piece. So yeah, I touch wood. It's not happened yet. I've never gone somewhere and someone says, you know, actually it's the wrong color. It doesn't look as good in person or something like that. I've never had that. They've always been really happy with their. I've been lucky, and I think there is an element of luck here because you are creating something and pulling it out the air. That's all. That's what you're doing with abstract art. But that's why I think those initial conversations are so important to really delve down. And sometimes, and I'm sure at some point it may not go right. But then I think for me is I want to be happy, so then I'll do everything I can to put it right. If that makes sense.
Practically as well. I have a few artists friends, and I speak to them about this all the time. It's quite hard to run an art business when you're one person as well, because it can't just like. You get commissioned, but you need a couple of days at least to like turn that around. So you can only sort of work on one or two things a week, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. And I think this is a really interesting thing. When I said to someone right at the beginning I was going to become this was another more established artist. They said to me, you're probably only, if you go professional with this, you only paint about 20% of the time. And I was like, are you nuts? That's all I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing it full time. What else am I going to be doing? It's so true. There'll be times where you spend loads of time in the studio, but you are a one-man band that you've got no choice. I hate social media. Hate it. Do not enjoy it. Never wasn't on it before I did the art thing. I have to be a social media consultant. You have to be an influencer. You have to know your websites, around websites. You have to know how to sell. You now have to know market yourself. That's the biggest thing. And I was at a show the other day, and one of the people that came to the show brought their granddaughter, and she's learning and she wants to do A-level, and she was like, have you got any advice? And I was like, yeah, my advice is make sure you can promote yourself, because that's the thing no one talks about as an artist. No one's going to do it for you. And if you can't reach out to people, and if you can't doesn't necessarily have to articulate well, but explain what you're doing and explain your work, then you're not going to get anywhere. I mean, and that is so important. So as an artist, there are so many hats you have to wear. And then once you've done all those jobs, then you might be able to get into the studio and work on those commissions. So yeah, it's a really good question that you've posed, because it's not what everyone thinks is just, you know, and like things like this. I'm so lucky I get loads of pot, and I love doing these podcasts. It's amazing. But it's things that people wouldn't even expect as an artist you do. And you do interviews, you have to write publications, features. Yeah, you have to do a lot.
It's not just all painting in the studio.
It's not just all painting. I wish it was.
The other sort of about the sort of process of it all, I think this stuff is really interesting to ask and useful, and it gives people the honest understanding as well. How does it sort of work building relationships with galleries? You kind of touched on this as a mistake you made at the start, but like, how does it work building a relationship with galleries and the art world itself? How much do you have to do with that to sort of get your name out there and build those connections?
You have to do a lot of it. I think for me, everyone will approach it differently. And there's a lot more established artists than me out there. But the way I do it, and I always have done it, is I think getting to know galleries is so important. So, for example, a lot of people will might just send their or courier their work down to a gallery. I never do that. So the other day I actually drove to York, which is 4.5 hours there, 4.5 hours back. Not all in one day, but I did get to meet them, to deliver personally, because they are, firstly, they're selling your work, but they're selling you. So they need to know who you are. They need to have met you. You need to be able to explain to them what you do and just build that personal relationship, because it's like any business. That's the most important thing, building that connection with the galleries. So if there is a problem, they'll reach out for you, to you as well. And I think they see you as a person. You're not just another artist. You're David or you're Jamie, you're someone they've met. So I think for me, I really would recommend everyone FaceTime with galleries as much as you can, and as much as they want you to be there. Of course, they might not want you to be there very much. I don't know. And then reaching out to galleries is, I think, as an artist, get used to rejection. You're going to get rejected. Doesn't mean your art's bad. It doesn't mean you could be the best artist in the world. You could literally be the best artist in the world, and you would get rejected from galleries. It wouldn't be their vibe. They've already got another artist like that. There could be so many different reasons you get rejected by a gallery. So you've just got to keep doing it. And sometimes it's a bit of luck. So I told about being at the Affordable. That happened because I was at another one of my shows, and a group show, about 1.5 years ago now. And the lady that ran the gallery was there. I started speaking to her, kept in contact with Instagram, didn't think much of it. Out of the blue, she's like, I've been following you, been looking at your work, absolutely love your gold collection. Would you like to come to the Affordable with us? You've got to get out there, because you don't know where the opportunities are going to arise. And it's the same thing with the art world, making those connections. It's hard for me, and there's a lot of people that do it a lot better. A lot of artists will go to a lot of launch shows and previews and stuff like that to get to know as much of the art world as they can. I've got kids, like I said, I do, majority of picking them up from school and putting them to bed and everything else, because my wife has the proper job. So I can't do that. So the way I do it is to try and, if I am doing like a group show, go to the group show, meet them, or reach out on Instagram, or try and support each other, because other artists, they may never buy from you, but believe me, they'll be your biggest cheerleaders. They're the ones that, if I put a post out there, they're the ones liking it. They're the ones commenting at it, about it. And they're just as important as the collectors, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think no matter what part of the creative industries you're in, your tribe is so important. It's the people around you at a similar... Also, I think something I'm learning a lot recently is the people around you at a similar level to where you're at as well is really useful. Or people who are just slightly ahead of where you are in your journey can be really useful, because they've just done it. And I think having them around, whether that be on social media or just to get advice from or whatever, it's really, really useful. So that's interesting. It's the same in the art world. This is probably a hard question to quantify as well, David, but the creative industries is often quite a privileged space. I mean, where I work in TV, I often sometimes feel like an imposter, and you sometimes see the same people succeeding again and again, and they're the people that maybe have family connections or come from money. Does that seem like the similar in the art world to you? Is it like that?
I think I do. I think, unfortunately, it's become, especially since COVID. I mean, like I said, I didn't do it before COVID full time, but what I've heard, it was a lot less about, it was more about, you'd approach a gallery and they'd give you an opportunity. I think a lot of the galleries lost a lot of money over COVID, and they become almost like, pay to play. So a lot of galleries now are like, oh, pay money to submit. And if we do get accepted, then you can pay 150 quid. And some of those are legitimately, it's not like the mistakes I made at the beginning. Like I said, some of them are legitimately good galleries. It's just their models change, and that's how they're operating. And that's absolutely fine. But the reason I bring it up is because you don't have a huge amount of money behind you. Then how can you pay for those opportunities? And then how do you get your work seen? So I think, unfortunately, you have to have a fair bit of money behind you to be able to really promote yourself. And I think the more money you have, unfortunately, I think the quicker you can do that. And I've always done this venture as a I sold my first painting, however many 4 years ago before I went professional. And I just reinvested that money and reinvested that money and reinvested that money. So I've never sort of borrowed a loan. I've never done anything, all just been that. But it takes a lot longer doing it like that than it does if you had 30 grand behind you and you could say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll pay for ads. I'll do this. I'll get a media consultant in. Yeah, you could do it a lot quicker. Of course you could. So I do think there's an element of privilege. And I think there's an element of you make your own luck as well. There are people that always seem to get lucky, but are they also the ones that are always out there, always, getting the exposure? Are they the ones maybe working 7 days a week as well that you just don't see how much they put into it? So I think there's a bit of both.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, it's an interesting answer though, and I appreciate you sort of talking about that side of it as well. It's always really hard when you're sort of having to back yourself and reinvest stuff yourself as well. But sometimes, yeah. It can be a strange industry across the board. I need to ask you about scuba diving as well. You touched on this earlier, and I had a question written about this as well. Tell us about that. That's not that common a thing, really. I don't know many people that scuba dive.
No, there's not many. No, nor do I. Literally, it's me. So I got into it. I love the ocean. I've always, they've like been like a dolphin when I was younger. I've always swam for, decent levels. The sea's always been like my happy place. And then years and years ago, I was on holiday and I went scuba diving and it came relatively naturally to me. But the reason I do it is because it's so calming down there, and you focus on your breathing, which becomes a bit like mindful again. And that's why I said it earlier. My happy place is diving or the studio, because your mind goes quiet. You're not thinking about what you're going to do next. You're just thinking about what you're seeing around you and focusing on your breathing. So again, for me, it's a really peaceful place. And that's why I love doing it.
How deep do you go when you dive and stuff? Are you underwater for quite a significant amount of time?
Yeah, so I am a advanced PADI deep diver, so I can go down to 40 meters. Yeah, so it's 40 meters is fairly deep, but to be honest with you won't be down there very long if you did go to 40 meters, because the pressure means that basically you use up more the air and everything else. So and you basically can't be too deep for too long, otherwise you get the bends and everything else and you can't come up quickly, blah, blah, blah. It gets very technical and very boring. But basically, you won't be down there very long. So most of the time you spend most of it about probably 18 meters. And that's where you see most of the stuff as well. So I was in South Africa probably 2-3 years ago now, shark diving outside of a cage. You weren't very deep. You were probably about 5 meters, but you had about 40 sharks just circling you the whole time. So, some of the best experiences are actually shallower than you think.
It's something I've never done. I
No?
don't know. I feel like I'd be maybe too scared for it. I think it's the breathing side of it. It's not even being under the water. It's the breathing side of it. I think that'd freak me out more. But I suppose you'd learn to do it. They train you, right? So
Yeah, they train you, but I think it does come naturally to some people. Yeah, 100. My wife can't do it. She panics, and a lot of people feel quite claustrophobic with it. So yeah, look, it's not for everyone at all. But if you can get your head around breathing and having the mask on and all that, and if it doesn't bother you, then you should definitely give it a go. It's at least once.
Yeah, it's always good to try stuff. Yeah, we got my mum this years ago when I was a kid. We got my mum for a 40th or something. This is going back a long time, but it's diving with sharks and like Deep Sea World or whatever it is called, the place.
Yeah,
and I think she enjoyed it. So yeah, maybe we'll do one of them at some point. Who knows?
I like that. I think she enjoyed it.
I think so. I mean, she might listen to this and go, "Nah, I wasn't."
Yeah, no, I hated it. Never do it again.
I think at the time she seemed, as a child, I remember it being a pleasant time. What are the similarities between diving and painting? Was what I was going to actually ask you there before I started talking about sharks.
Before, yeah, the escape. The escape, yeah, 100%. Just not having to, it's really hard to explain, having ADHD and autism don't go together. They are complete and utter contrast. You can't, yeah. So if you can imagine your brain always, every minute of every day at each other, just all the time. One part of your brain going on board and the other part of your brain going, you've got to do it properly. Yeah, it's not great. So if you find something where you switch off and you can escape from that noise, you do it. And that for me is what both painting and diving does for me. It just switches off the noise. Yeah, it's nice.
No,
Really
it's
nice.
cool. It's nice that they can inform each other as well. I've just got a couple more questions for you, David, but one of
Yeah,
them
sure.
is a new question I've started asking people. But what do you hate most about the creative industries? It's almost a bit of a negative question, but I'm going to start. I kind of someone I've been playing around with as a question. But is there anything about it that frustrates you particularly?
I think the thing that winds me up more than anything else as an artist is maybe not about the industry, is the way it's gone so social media focused. You know, you don't have an option, and you can argue that it's such a blessing to be able to get people from Australia seeing your work, and it is a blessing. But for me, it's not really about the art. I could put my best painting out there ever, and it might get one view because it's got a bad hook. If I put my worst painting out there ever and put a good hook on it, it can get 207,000 views. So that is so frustrating as an artist. So it's nothing about the artwork. It's how good I can be with words. And believe me, I'm rubbish with words. So my hooks are terrible. It's never pretty. So that is the biggest frustration. Because when I became an artist, I paint and I'll put myself out there and people will love the work, and they do, but they only get to see the work if I put a good hook on it. So that is a real frustration. As an industry as a whole, I think the perception that it's very pretentious, and it is in some cases extremely pretentious. But the galleries I work with and the shows I do and the other artists I meet aren't, and there will be some, and it's a shame that people have that, viewpoint, because if you say, oh, would you want to come to a show? They're like, oh, where it is? It's almost walking into a gallery is scary. It's like, or you have to buy, or you don't, just go and enjoy the experience for what it is, which is enjoying the artwork on the walls. It'd be nice if we could sort of, get the message over to people that, it isn't as pretentious as maybe you think, and anyone can walk into a gallery and enjoy it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with that. I think that's the case in a lot of the different parts of the creative industries. People have that perception about what artists are like and what creative people are sometimes like, and it's a very mixed place, and it's not always like that at all. And there's lots of that's why it's so hard to get, for example, certain demographics into certain things like theatre, for example. So many working class kids when I was growing up, and myself included, would have, and I was lucky enough that I did get to go and see some of it, but would love going to the theatre, but it's seen as quite a middle class, inaccessible thing, and it is to an extent. And that puts off certain groups from being able to access it. And it's similar with art galleries. There'll be lots of working class kids or people from certain demographics that probably think that world isn't for them, and then they don't get to access it. And
Yeah.
100% agree with that.
And when they do access it, they realise it's not. And that's why I think it's so important as an artist not just to focus on one thing. So do everything. So I do. I said I work with galleries and I do art fairs, which are quite standard. But then I also do an art trail. So every year I do the Lee Art Trail, which is an art trail local to me. And I'll probably do that as long as I can, because it's a different way to get people that maybe wouldn't walk into a gallery, but are quite happy to walk along an art trail that see your work. So just try loads of different things, because then you'll get to different demographics.
I've just got one more question for you, David. And you'd offered some great insights throughout, but what's your sort of closing advice for anyone that wants to be an artist right now?
Have a thick skin. You have to have a thick skin to do it. And I say that as someone who hasn't got a particularly thick skin. I think don't take it too personally. They're not judging. Some people will judge your work, but that happens. But most rejections aren't based on someone hating your work. It's just based on probably a million other things, going on in their world at the time. And I think it is a place where, like I said earlier, you have to believe in yourself even when you don't believe in yourself, and just keep going, because it's really easy. And I think a lot, you said something earlier, it rings true. There's so many people on social media that will say, I've sold another one, I've sold another one, I've sold another one, and I've sold another one. I don't generally do a huge amount of that, to be honest with you, because I know how it makes me feel when I see other people saying it all the time. And it may not always be the case. It may be trying to make it look better than they are. Not saying they are, but they could be. So you can you can look at everyone else and you can compare to everyone else and you can be like, oh, everyone's doing so much better than me, and I'm just going to give up, and I can't be. And I'm saying it to all different levels. I think every artist I've spoken to, whether they're just starting or more established, they all feel like this at some point, that I should just give up. Everyone's doing better than me. And they're not. You just got to keep putting that one foot in front of the other and keep doing it and keep creating and create honestly. Because if you create to sell, you won't enjoy it. And it won't make it any easier to sell that piece. Create generally because that's who you are. And then your audience will find you.
That's a really nice place to close on. And it's so true though, social media does, one of the most negative aspects of it is it's the comparison part that can breed quite a lot of discontent, and it can really make you feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. And it's so interesting. I think there is a real like pushback against that now, because I'm noticing a lot of the videos I post at the moment, or podcast episodes that do the best, are the ones where I'm being totally honest about the difficult part of working in TV, or being a creative person or whatever it might be, not just all the successes, because we always see that every day and we go, oh, they're doing this thing, I'm doing enough, I'm like behind, and it can put a lot of people off. So I completely hear what you're saying there.
I think you should celebrate, and I think you should celebrate. I mean, when things happen, don't get me wrong. I put it on Instagram. It's important. You want to be showing people that you are at the next event and everything else. But it's, what do they say? Comparison to thief of joy or something. It's
comparison is the thief of joy, I think, is the quote.
Yeah.
Then another one I really like is that comparison is creative kryptonite, and I think that's true as well.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think I've never heard of that. I like that a lot. Yeah, because if you start looking at everyone else and go, oh, for example, oh, this person's they keep selling, they're selling, and I'm gonna, oh, let's change what I do, because, and then all of a sudden you've changed. You're approaching how you're creating that in a way that's not natural to you, which people know straight away, all because you're comparing what someone else is doing. So yeah, I really like that kryptonite. I have to remember that one. I
can't take credit for that one, but I think I guessed on the show maybe once said, I've done so many of these podcasts now, coming up for 200 episodes, so I actually now feel so bad when I forget to credit whoever it was, but brilliant former guest once said that. But David, thank you very, very much for your time. It's great to finally make this happen. And where can people find your work? There's links in the show notes, but sometimes people like to hear it said out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's plug-in time, isn't it? So you can find my work on my website, which is www.dkirkmanart.com, or head over to Instagram, where it's dkirkmanart. It's nice and simple, hopefully.
Great. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Please subscribe to Just Get a Real Job wherever you get podcasts. And David, thank you very, very much for your time. Have a lovely night and lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Just get a real